Trump proposal seeks to crack down on food stamp loophole. Residents signing up for food stamps in Minnesota are provided a brochure about domestic violence, but it doesn't matter if they even read the pamphlet. The mere fact it would, as odd as that might sound, it's not actually unusual. 38 other states also have gotten around federal income or asset limits for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program by using federal welfare grants to produce materials informing food stamp applicants about other available social services. Illinois, the tactic was encouraged by former President Barack Obama's administration as a way for states to route federal food aid to households that might not otherwise qualify under a strict enforcement of federal guidelines. Now, the proposed rule change, outlined this past week by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, has highlighted the ideological clash between Trump's attempts to tighten government entitlement programs and efforts in some states to widen the social safety net. It's also stirred outrage and uncertainty among some who stand to be affected. Agriculture Secretary Sonny Perdue said the proposed rule change is intended to close a loophole that states have misused too effectively. Current federal guidelines forbid people who make more than 130% of the poverty level from getting food stamps. But many states, at issue is a federal policy that allows people who receive benefits through other government programs, such as temporary assistance for needy families, to automatically qualify for the food aid program known as SNAP. The practice, in 2009, Obama's Agriculture Department sent a memo to its regional directors encouraging states to adopt what it termed as broad. Most states adopted the strategy. 30 states and the department's Inspector General has raised concerns about the tactic. It also came under Sander, who is a Trump supporter, told the Associated Press this week that he had been trying to make a point, "You not game the system you," and praised Trump's administration for proposing to tighten eligibility standards. Although under Sander failed to persuade Minnesota to change its policy, critics were more successful in Mississippi. On July 1, under the Trump administration's proposed rule change, residents in all states would need to be authorized to receive at least $50 a month in TANF benefits for a minimum of 6 months in order to automatically qualify for food stamps. Subsidies for the Minnesota Department of Human Services has estimated that 12,000 of its roughly 400,000 food stamp recipients could be cut off if the federal government eliminates its ability to use a brochure as justification for offering food stamps to those earning up to 165% of the federal poverty level instead of the federal threshold of 130% of the poverty mark. Similar estimates aren't available for all states. Advocates for the poor say states' exceptions to federal guidelines have helped people gradually transition off food stamps when they get modest raises at work and have enabled seniors and the disabled to save money without going hungry. Advocates also follow David A. Leave it.
Raindrop, drop top smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park pot.